Welcome back to the Fear
and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies,
and just a little bit of beer.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Seamus.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Did you miss me? Aren't you drinking?
I never drink. Why?
Before we get into tonight's episode, we want to remind all of those listening on Apple Podcasts to drop us a 5-star review. It helps us grow as a podcast and build our audience. If you're listening on Spotify or any other platform, follow us, and don't forget to share with friends and family who might have a little bit of the strange in them as well.
And while you're on those socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, be sure to find us, Fear and Beer Pod. Give us a like, share, and you can always message us. We love to interact with all you guys. So we asked this week which scare zone from this previous year you would select as a house. And we got a lot of responses.
Yeah, we used you for an idea this week.
And we got a lot of various responses. So we decided that this week, let's take a look back another time. Let's look back at HHN31. Let's look at those scare zones. And let's kind of talk about how each one of these could potentially work out as a house. Now, obviously, Scarecrow was a house. So is there a continuation of the story? Not necessarily, but we tried to come up with a potential story for each of these, and some more just kind of spitball ideas and stuff like that. But that's kind of what we do here. We just kind of spitball and we throw ideas out there that, well, who knows what will stick. Maybe these ideas are terrible. Maybe some are okay. But you can blame work for not allowing me to actually jump into these ideas as much as I would have liked to, but
that goes for both of us.
We got some ideas.
It's really hard to think when I've got a million other things being thrown at me during the day. So
yeah. So I have my ideas for 4 out of the 5 scare zones down, and the last one we'll just spitball. But I think what would be fun is I'll kind of read you off my idea. And we can kind of expand upon that or say, no, this is crap, and then we'll try and come up with something else on the spot. But that's what we're going to be talking about today. Any ideas of ways to expand these latest scare zones that we just went through this last year?
I think
Horror Nights.
I mean, before we get started, I think 31, the scare zones were all really well done. I think there's only probably one that we'd really have to kind of reach a little bit to make it fit a unique house. But a lot of them gave us really in-depth or a lot to work with, even for what a scare zone is.
Yeah, and I tried to... I struggled with these scare zones because they already had such a good story in place.
Yeah.
So then it was kind of sort of trying to find a way to expand that story or continue it in some way that wasn't too repetitive. So I tried to do a little something with each one of these scare zones to make it just a little different from what it previously was. And also we do have a little guest host with us dancing around somewhere on the floor. So if you see me looking down, if you see me looking down, or you hear little whines from a small little wiener dog, that's Opie. He's guest hosting this episode.
To be fair, he's in the room and he's quieter than my dogs, and we do it remotely. So
if you hear that, that's what that
no
is.
shame.
That's Opie. So before we dive into all of what we're going to be talking about, let's dump into some beers, which I think these are repeats.
I know this one I have. No, this one is definitely a repeat. I've had this before, so
yeah, I think this one as well. But this is that part where I buy the beers and we buy them as like 4s and 6s,
right?
And I don't really want to buy more 4-packs and 6s when I have all these like little stragglers still sticking around. So it's like, it goes in cycles. We'll do like 4 or 5 new episodes, and that's after I've gone and purchased you've purchased like various little beers. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to buy more because I still have like 16 remaining, but they are recycled. So we're diving back into this one. Is from Infinite Ale Works. This is Into the Dark Roast. It's an Imperial Coffee Stout.
Yeah, it's right up your alley.
9%, 0 IBU, so really no hoppiness there. But I'm excited. It's a big, bold, and surprisingly balanced. Has a very dark appearance and has a rich malty character. So that's what I have on this beer. That's what I remember. You can pick this up at Total Wines, World of Beer, and stuff like that. They're kind of all over the place. But if it's as good as I remember, I don't know why I haven't really cracked into these all too often. But I seldom drink now outside of the podcast. Now that Horror Nights is over, I just kind of like a little decompression phase is needed before the holidays. 'Cause that's when the drinking really ramps up again.
Yeah, I don't know what this whole slowing down thing is. So, granted, on most nights I drink Silver Bullets. So it's not like I'm drinking heavy high IBU or high alcohol volume beers. I haven't done an actual like craft beer run in probably 6 months. So I need to do it again. Obviously, money sucks, so it's hard to come with money or justify $150 at the
That's the worst
bottle
part.
shop. That's the hardest part with it. Like, I love doing it, but I'm finding it harder to justify when I go and I spend $120 on 8 beers.
Especially when you walk in and you're like, "Ooh, I want this."
For $100, I could buy like a month worth of cheap beer. So I know I'm breaking the rules. I shouldn't be doing that. I should be buying good beer, but eventually I will get back there because I do need to replace some of the beers that I haven't brought with me here. I feel bad. I keep using your stragglers.
Like I said, I need to get them out of the fridge so I can get new beer. So it helps me.
Right. But I'm drinking. I think this is also a repeat. I don't know if it's a repeat on the podcast, but I've definitely had it before. It's called Don't Poke the Bear. It's from Sailfish here in Florida. It's a double blonde ale. So I remember this being pretty unique. There's not too many blonde ales that are doubles. Essentially what that means is they usually just use double the amount of hops that they typically use. Mm-hmm. There's no science. I've said this before on the podcast. I've said it before on other things. There's no real science as to how much a single versus a double is. It's just double what they typically use. So they may use less than a single than another brewery, so their doubles are less than their doubles, but at the end of the day, they end up being right around the same alcohol by volume. So a blonde ale that's 8% is pretty heavy. I've had it before. I don't know if I was a huge fan of it, so maybe the second time around it'll change a little bit for me. Untapped has nothing on it about it, other than the fact that it's a double blonde ale with honey. So I'm going to read you what Kevin wrote. Kevin from Killer Reviews.
Who will be back shortly.
Who will be back eventually. Smooth blonde ale that delivers a touch of semi-sweet honey. What would be a simple, well-done pale blonde has a great twist. He gave it a 4 out of 5. So if Kevin gave it a 4 out of 5, it's probably pretty good. When I had it the last time, I gave it a 2.75, so just over half. So maybe it'll be a little bit better this time when I have it, but who knows? We'll see what happens. I think it's because I'm not a huge honey fan, but I don't know.
All right, let's crack these open.
Woo!
Let's see how these beers have held up.
Definitely. I think it's the honey for me. I'm not a huge honey fan, and I think that's what I didn't like about it.
Oh, yeah, this is that motor oil. This is that dark beer. I remember having the Don't Poke a Bear, and I liked it, but it was I feel like when I like those double like strong style drinks, I like it as like the IPAs and stuff. The double ale just felt like out of place for me. It was like two things that shouldn't be.
For me, like a blonde ale is not the same thing, obviously, as a pale ale, like American Pale Ale, India Pale Ale, whatever it might be. They may be in the same family, but they're definitely different. Especially if you like a hazier or fruitier IPA, double IPA, like a NEPA. Obviously, a blonde ale is completely different than that. It's a little bit closer to a standard IPA, but still, usually it's what they throw in it. Like a blonde ale is typically lighter, so they use a little bit lighter ingredients. They don't use as many heavier hops or various hop flavors, like whereas IPAs or American Pale Ales, they use a lot more hop. So this being a double, I'm interested. I'm just so used to blondes being like a lighter beer.
Yeah,
it's weird, like you said, having a heavier light beer.
Yeah,
I guess. And when we say light, we don't mean like Miller Lite or Coors Light. That's a different thing.
Style of light.
But like a lighter ale is a blonde ale, something along those lines. But I don't know. We'll give it a shot, see what happens.
Dive in. Cheers.
Yeah, it's definitely the honey that I'm not a huge fan of.
Super coffee. Very coffee. Yeah. It's like I'm chewing coffee beans.
Yeah, it's weird. Like you drink a beer, which will depress you because the alcohol actually depresses you a little bit, but then you drink the coffee, which is a stimulant. It stimulates you.
The only negative,
it's a weird balance.
The only negative on this beer is on me. is for keeping it so long because it's very metallic-y right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you keep canned beers, aluminum canned beers, they definitely start to taste like the can.
Yep.
And that's no fault of anybody, but just leaving it sitting in the fridge. Like this one, like this Don't Cook the Bear. I don't really have the metallic-y taste, so I don't think it's been sitting as long. The crazy thing about this is that like it's 8%, but it doesn't taste like 8%. It doesn't feel like an 8%. You have some 8% ales, and you're like, damn, it's boozy.
Yep.
This isn't really that bad. So I don't know if it's maybe just the honey that's overpowering that flavor. I'm not a huge fan of honey. That's why I don't rate it as high. But again, that's my personal opinion. It's still a good beer. I think it's like well made. Like it doesn't taste bad.
Yeah.
It's just
not your style.
Not my thing, I guess.
All right. So let's just get this started right up front. Let's go. We'll do like a little loop, like we're walking through the park, because the one that we discussed where we have to stretch is probably the one right up front, the Plaza of the Stars.
Yeah.
Horrors of Halloween.
Yeah.
So
there's not a whole lot you can do with it.
Yes, this was one of the scare zones that, again, doesn't have much story for us to pull from. So what I did, and my first words were, Pumpkin Lord returns, but a little less shitty. So, and I kind of toyed with that idea. Is like, do we want to do a Wicked Growth 2 style house where it's like, okay, back to the glory days of Pumpkin Lord where he's not just farting and burping? Or do we want to kind of expand from where the character is, because that is the character's growth now?
Yeah, so the hard time I have with this is that I'd rather him be in this in the new proposed Scarecrow house. Okay. Because he fits that. It's better.
Yep.
And they used elements from that house in his house. So I struggle with the fact that he's in this other scare zone. So I wanted to cheat and be like,
and he's now in that.
Screw everything else and just put him with Scarecrow and combine them together. Because wouldn't this scare zone really just be like Hellblock Horror again?
Sort of. So I took elements. I took some creative licenses. And my idea was it kind of picks up a little bit after Wicked Growth and after the Horrors of Halloween. We sort of enter through like this large pumpkin patch area that has the large vines kind of going up and down through the floor, creating boo holes.
Yep.
So it's very large scale. But the next room is the witches from the original house are back there, and they're discussing that Pumpkin Lord has outgrown his welcome, and they have to start a new spell. So the idea of this is the little Pumpkin Lord's goblin people are just kind of wreaking havoc. They're gathering more Halloween to create a stronger Halloween, create the Pumpkin Lord even stronger, bigger. And Pumpkin Lord's just kind of sitting back on like the large pumpkin with his feet up on Little Boo, just completely disrespecting what he used to be. So the basis of this house is now the witches growing a new savior for Halloween, and that is the Pumpkin. And it's sort of like creating Pumpkin Lord as sort of like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy, where there's these different stages of evolution for the character. And the idea is that the Pumpkin is the one that is going to be overthrowing and kind of usurping Pumpkin Lord as that character. So I've envisioned him as just like... So if you are familiar with like Marvel comics or anything like that, like obviously there's young Groot, teen Groot, baby Groot, Groot, but then there is the one that we have yet to see in the movies, which is Alpha Groot, and he's just kind of like a bigger, bulkier version. So it's kind of like my version of Pumpkin would draw from that, where he's taller, bigger,
like Mecha Godzilla.
Yeah, not fat, just like built like tree trunks. And instead of like the horns on his head, it's literally like a pumpkin style crown that's like gooing out and stuff like that. So I have that sort of as like the witches reconjuring a new evil of Halloween, trying to take over the Pumpkin Lord, and to see who is the true supremacy of Halloween. What do we think on that one?
I don't hate it.
I didn't know where else to go from this thing.
It's interesting. I mean, I was kind of thinking like almost like following along the lines of what you're talking about, rather than creating a new Pumpkin Lord or a new character based off Pumpkin Lord. it would be them just trying to complete a spell to reverse him, because maybe he's become almost like the Frankenstein monster in the sense that like he can't be controlled.
Yes,
by his creators.
That's kind of where this tension
so rather
from the
than
story
being
comes.
like being like goofy or lazy, it's more him like he's starting to take over, or maybe his minions are starting to take over, and the witches that happen to create him realize, oh crap, like we have to stop the monster because we can't control the monster.
Yep.
And you kind of pitch this battle against like the witches and their witch coven versus Pumpkin Lord and his pumpkin
minion-y things,
his little boos,
which I like that it's a good character that introduced in this year's Horrors of Halloween that is just nice. Like we talked about previously, I wish that those were the main characters of that scare zone and not the various characters from other scare zones.
Yeah, I don't understand why they didn't do that.
Because that's why I kind of just eliminated them from the process of including them into this house. So I'm not going to include, a girl from Graveyard and a trick-or-treater from Sweets and stuff like that. So I kind of want to challenge the sense of that, where it was almost like in the back of my head too, like, man, loved Pumpkin Lord at 30. 31 was just a little disappointed with how the character
I didn't like
developed.
how they used him. I said it once already, but
yeah. So I was almost in that sense of like, fuck it, kill it, start over. It's in that sense.
And the worst part is like I don't
shedding the skin of one and getting this other like mega.
That's
one.
why I don't necessarily want to make Pumpkin Lord the bad guy, I guess, in a way, if that makes sense. Like the anti-hero type thing. I want him to still kind of be like the main draw, because I do like him still as a character.
Yeah.
I don't think he was bad this year. I just think that Universal used him kind of almost as a throwaway.
Yeah.
Like, hey, remember this guy?
Yeah.
Like
Here, look at him.
Like the Member Berries type thing. Like,
remember?
Right. And I think that's the problem with him this year, was that they didn't give him enough to do. Like, they basically said, hey, this scare zone, there's nothing going on. Let's stick Pumpkin Lord up front. That'll make it better.
That'll draw.
And like, if that's the case, just screw making it a scare zone. Just put the damn sign up. And that's it.
Yeah, Pumpkin Lord welcomes you.
Right. There's no reason, like, just put the Halloween Horror Nights sign, and there's no reason to have a scare zone there.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it was just kind of like, let's just put things out there and we'll fill the space. But, like, the entirety of the back of the park is not used.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's the point in filling the front?
So heavy with all that nonsense.
Because, I mean, I guarantee you that 90% of your guests cut right and went through Graveyard.
I mostly did.
Right. So, I don't know. I feel like it's really hard to turn the scare zone into a house, so we're definitely cheating here and saying, let's just take the Pumpkin Lord character and create another Pumpkin Lord house.
Yeah.
Because everybody would want that anyways.
And that's sort of like where
no one's going to say no to that.
Yeah, that's sort of where I went with a couple of these ideas, where it was like, I don't want to just say stick this house or scare zone into a house and just recreate it. I do want to add a little bit of a touch there. And like we said, we didn't have as much time to kind of flesh out ideas, but
well, even if we did, this one would have been hard.
Yeah, there's not much to work with. So that's why I'm kind of like Alpha Pumpkin Lord or Pumpkin or the
yeah, whatever. Either way, King Triple H.
Yeah, exactly. The game,
King of the Ring.
But it's something in that sense where it's like birthing a new character, kind of like I keep going back to reference Groot, but one Groot is born from one Groot, so you have to kill the Pumpkin Lord to kind of grow.
I mean, Halloween Horror Nights is kind of like Universal's Marvel universe, I guess.
Pretty much.
Marvel Universal.
The HHNCU.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, so like we'd have the pumpkin kind of growing from within and kind of just exploding the Pumpkin Lord's body and being born that way. And just kind of
a little alien reference too.
Yeah, exactly. So as much as like where this house is going to take place, I mean, you're going to get the witch's room. It's tough too, because again, I don't want to just go back and be like old farm style house like Wicked Grove.
No, I don't think it has to be.
I'm trying to think of like the other elements.
I think kind of like I don't know, forget what episode we were talking about this on, maybe the hype episode or something, or what we think is going to happen. But I think it could take place more on a grander scale. It doesn't have to be just like a farmhouse. It can be like the small town that he's now taken over and have everything covered in vines and shit. And he's kind of just like become like like a pumpkin dictator.
Yeah,
like over a small town, killed all the humans off.
Have all like the pumpkin like guts and stuff like.
And you can honestly say that like all the little all his little boos are like mutated children or something like that.
Yeah,
like he abducted all like the Pied Piper and all the fucking kids from the town.
Yep.
And turned them into like little Sams.
Yep, just in and out. Yeah, I like that. So one of my other ideas too was like almost like HHN icons sort of. Where you're entering through Fear's Lantern.
Yeah.
You pretty much build up a large scale pumpkin, like the one that he was on.
Right, yeah.
And it takes place like inside of a pumpkin world.
Yeah. That'd be kind of cool.
Everything just kind of like
you could almost throw like
covered.
little like pumpkin pumpkin Easter eggs in there.
Mm-hmm.
Have like jack-o'-lanterns, Jack or lanterns.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like something like that.
Yeah. So that's what I kind of got for the horrors of Halloween, because I think that one was one of the tougher ones to really stretch an idea out. And one person suggested a Pumpkin Lord house when they asked for about the scare zones and houses. There was one, possibly two.
I mean, again, would we want a Pumpkin Lord house so soon after the first one? I don't think people would say no.
Yeah, I mean at this point,
I think some people would probably be like, "Oh, really? We just had him twice." Like,
for me, because it's been 2 years, I'm okay with taking a break.
Yep.
I think if you revisit the Wicked Growth storyline or the Pumpkin Lord in like 2 or 3 years, that's enough of a little bit of a gap.
Yeah.
So let's move along then. So we're gonna continue. We're gonna head to Sweet's Revenge. So obviously the scare zone that we voted for our award, saying that this would be probably the best future house.
I still think it's the best. It's the best one for a house.
I think so too.
I think there's so much you can play with. There's so many things you can do with this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the scare actors just kind of like write themselves into the story. Like they're so all well done, and they're so unique too.
Yep. So this one was suggested a lot as well. And so my story picks up kind of after that Halloween. So it's after what they refer to as successful Halloween. Major Sweets and Mrs. Treats welcome you to their factory. So it's a very like Willy Wonka-esque house.
Halloween 3.
House. Yep. Willy Wonka mixed with Halloween 3. So like I wanted to stay away from just being like another Halloween town fair, outdoorsy style house.
Yeah.
Just because I think it did it so brilliantly already as the scare zone. And again, the set pieces would be like, oh, just put the mayor stand up and put the the Ferris wheel or whatever up in there. So I wanted to base this one mostly in the factory, having all these different various mechanisms, machines, stuff like that.
Yep.
You walk through like a hallway, instead of like employees of the month, it's all just like the gory aftermath pictures of the scare zone of all the kids kind of killing the townspeople and going on their rampage. This would definitely be like the very colorful. I don't want to fully put it in the goofy camp.
No, I don't.
But it's going to be like a colorful.
It's that colorful, gory house.
Yeah.
Like not as goofy as Killer Clowns, but maybe as colorful as that.
Mm-hmm.
But add in a lot of the blood and the gore and the mutated children and everything and
like
all that kind of stuff.
Blood and gore, I'd have as like bright greens and purples and yellows, like. Maybe not yellow because people.
Well,
think
no,
that's
it could almost
but...
be like the candy has like mutated the color of their innards, basically, and like when you rip somebody in half,
and
like
stuff.
They're glowing neon yellows and greens and blues and
pouring
shit.
Sugar.
Yeah.
I'd have like kegs of different bright colors, kind of being poured into like a candy stream or a machine, and then you see like various characters being force fed this like new serum or this upgrade from previous year.
So he like abducts a lot of the town's children
as like
and like
test
forces
subjects.
them as test subjects.
Yeah. So it's like how he's trying to improve on the previous year.
Yeah.
The new formula though, I put is like new is more potent. So instead of like, I believe on the very first
create super
map,
soldiers.
Yeah, essentially. I think on the first map it was like mutated candy children or something along the lines where we were like, okay, it's gonna be like a morph of candy and children, but we didn't really get that. We just got like the kids were possessed essentially and turned into these murderous characters. Whereas this formula will like head back into that world of these children are mutating into candy.
Maybe he's like trying to create super like minion soldier type
that,
things,
or like he's
take over.
trying to create legit candy children, like legit Sour Patch.
He said, "We're gonna take Hershey, Pennsylvania. God damn it!
Yeah,
you're all going down."
Like, and I think you could have a lot of cool kills with like these new characters. You could have somebody with like Laffy Taffy arms.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, because the thing is, I think, like I said before, they're all so unique, and I think there's so many more ideas that you can come up with. There's so many ideas, and there's so many different types of like candy. Yeah, that you can come up with something for it, like for all these different things,
like little popsicles on their fingers, and it's like someone just like stabbing through their eyes. But I also was toying with the idea of like Mistreats turning on Mayor Sweets.
Yeah, I still think you could do that
and becoming like the hero and taking these like new mutated candy children under her wing, and it's like. She's her army.
I keep doing the reference, but she's the Professor X of all the mutated fucking candy kids.
Kinda. So it's like I would have it. I would spin it that way, where it was, you know, everything last year was all Major Sweets Candy Company. Oh, there's Major Sweets walking around, blah blah blah.
Yep.
And Miss Treats was kind of pushed to the wayside a little bit. She had her little moment by the truck with the bats and stuff like that, but she really didn't get the credit that was due in this like master plan of murdering the town. So what does she do? She murders the man who murdered the town. So like she, in this new formula, has enlisted that they're kind of obedient to her
rather
not
than him,
and she kind of turns it onto them, or turns it onto him.
That could be like your final confrontation.
And it's now not like Major Sweets, it's Major Major Treats, and they kind of like swap the logo out. So now she's the face of the company, the head honcho of like Halloween murder time.
Yeah, that would be kind of funny.
But I would definitely pull a lot of scenes from like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I would pull a lot of like very similar stuff like that, like the Chocolate River. You could do River with like
some messed up like theme song as you're walking into the factory.
Like the Blueberry, blowing somebody up until they like pop and have that loud sound be like one of the scares. But I would like to see actual like mutated candy children turning into that sense. Pretty much like we keep talking. I mean, we keep talking Marvel stuff, but like literally like superheroes.
But like
of,
Willy Wonka
candy.
too. Like instead of like the kids like being somewhat tame, like these kids are like not only just like becoming monstrosities, but like there's actual like horror involved because not just like goofy kids movie type stuff.
Yeah, I would definitely see it being very like colorful, but I would have it as like that body horror.
Yeah, I do have one request.
Yeah,
I want the final scene to be us going into the tribute movie theater.
Yeah,
and I want a small little boy who wants to be an usher one day eat some of the mutated candy.
Yeah. And
there's a reason why Usher becomes the Usher.
Yeah. So that's
I'm going to keep throwing icon references in this whole episode just so everybody knows that.
So that's where I kind of had my idea for
No, I mean I think you and I are exactly on the same page. Like I think it can't be just like another rehash of like the mutated town or whatever, or
just children attacking
Children of the Corn type shit. We need to be like bring us into the world of Major Sweets or Mr. Sweets, whatever the fuck his name is. And build that up.
Yeah, very psychedelic.
Give us an actual story.
Yeah, just like the way that they could take the mutated aspect and design it, they would like just
there's so many ways you can go
blow it out of the top.
So many ways you can go with it. Plus, it would be. I mean, this would probably have one of the better facades of that year. Because you can build the facade of like the town and the big factory in the background, that sort of thing. So
and that would be like the entrance, like the two characters, like Major Sweet Mysteries, like welcoming you into the factory.
Yeah.
So let's move all the way across now to the San Francisco area where we had Conjure the Dark. This one I had a little bit of trouble with as well, trying to figure out like where we could take this story. So
I think we could do English countryside, much kind of like, American Werewolf in London. Yeah, I think they've done that as a house before. So you kind of do that English countryside type of thing where you enter like the gates of like little old Amity village or whatever, something stupid like that.
Little Irish towns,
right?
Like
right. Either way, whatever. And then, but like, almost like, Dead Man's was a little bit. Like you're kind of walking into that small town or Chupacabras, and like all the townsfolk are like weirded out and like they're acting weird or whatever. But it's because they are really a coven of, sorcerer or demon worshipping sorcerers, or whatever that, is led by the red-haired sorceress who pulls in all the monsters and shit. And like the house takes place on Halloween night or like All Hallows Eve or whatever it is, and they're performing a sacrifice, and that opens the portal to hell or whatever else dimension these demons come from. So.
Yeah, and that's where I was kind of like, where do we go? Because so this was like them.
I don't think we have to change a whole lot with this.
I was just placing it pretty much in different areas. So I was trying to reference it again without doing another MCU reference, but essentially I'm not.
Just do it. Just do it.
So I would view it almost as like the Portals scenes.
Yeah.
Where now that the first Halloween has like commenced, they've now written these rules of what has to take place on a Halloween. So they have to sacrifice, they have to pillage. So we have different portals, and we're visiting different like, because they were using like the Celtic ruins and stuff. So I was like, we do like an Irish style house and do like Irish village, like seaside villages, like cottages, farms, and essentially like the little portals opening up of the different alpha and beta demons going and just wreaking havoc on these towns and trying to, in their eyes, spread Halloween, and like kind of like how the Pumpkin Lord had to spread Halloween. They're figuring out that the way to kind of commit Halloween is to now introduce the world to it. So that's where we kind of just are left with the creation of Halloween. We haven't really learned as to why they needed to create Halloween or why they wanted to, but we have to continue the sacrifice and kind of keep that story going. This one was tougher for me because it just really, it was very showy. It was blood sacrifice, demons reaping the benefits, but I imagine it where like they're from a different world. In order for their world to survive or be able to bring more of their kind into our world, it's by spreading more Halloween. So like that one little Halloween they had with the sorceress and the sacrifice was enough like for them to come through.
Right.
But for more to come through, we need to spread it.
We need to sacrifice more.
Spread it. So these different European countries are kind of slowly being demonized by the alphas and the betas.
Yeah,
and
I mean, you can
goblins.
almost... It seems very Wicker Man to me.
Yep.
Like, you could almost do it like same idea, British Isle, some random area of the UK that's kind of like in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
And it's a bunch of fucking pagans. Mm-hmm. And they like worship this demon cult or whatever, and they sacrifice somebody by doing what they do at... obviously they sacrificed the girl in the scare zone. Now they have to do more, so they have to be bringing people in. So they bring tourists in, they bring us in.
Yep.
And we're actually being led to the sacrifice because we need to be sacrificed to bring more demons into our realm.
Yep.
So like we're kind of like the dupes that they're bringing in to do that.
And it would be fun to...
and as the tour guide said, we will not survive this house.
This house will not be a survival house. It is fun too because there's an aspect from Spirits of the Coven that I'd like to play with this house too, where the demons are able to morph into like characters that don't resemble demons and then slowly
become more human. Yeah,
exactly. So like they're kind of the ones that are hiding in
kind
plain
of like
sight.
The Skrulls.
This is a very MCU.
Sorry for anyone that's not an MCU fan. But.
So yeah, if you're not, you might not understand all the references. But you can start researching because you should. But yes, very Skrull-like, where it's just kind of like it's a very paranoid house. You don't know who's actually a victim, who's actually a demon, who's trying to lure you, who's not. I'd like to see that aspect of transformation done in a better way, because it just felt like with Spirits, it just was. I just wasn't feeling it. They started out really nice, and it just some of the like old witchy masks felt like just old witchy masks. Like it didn't fully get me.
Yeah, I mean the little, I don't know what you would call them, but the ogre characters that come out of like the rocky outcropping type thing. Like those guys were like, they were really good. They felt kind of cheesy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still think the stage part of it was kind of where
that was
you were
the hero
supposed to
of
get
the
it.
Scare Zone. Yep.
So I think if you focus on that type of stuff, and you get more beefy motherfuckers like the guys that played the dudes with the axes,
big old, the alphas.
Like if you get more of those dudes, like it would work. I think this one's actually got more to it than a couple of the other ones this year. Like again, this was probably my biggest surprise of Scare Zone. Outside of maybe Graveyard. I guess this and Graveyard, 2 biggest surprises for Scare Zones.
This, I mean, I think going back were our 4 and 5.
But I feel like this one, you can do enough of an original idea out of it just being what it is.
Yeah.
And it will at least be an original house. It won't feel like it's a rehash of other things.
Yes, correct.
Like, unfortunately, Graveyard, as good as it was, when we get to it, we'll talk about it. I feel like that one's it's going to feel more rehashy because it's a graveyard.
Yeah.
But with this, like, I think if you do that whole idea of, like, I love the idea of they need more souls and more, we need to sacrifice more on Halloween to bring more into this realm. I like that idea.
Invade.
That's why they, they're bringing a lot of tourists to this, like, British countryside to then sacrifice all of us to create more demons.
Just kind of
I think that's a great idea. I think that would work really well.
Sort of taking over the body for them to be able to live.
I mean, yes, some people look at it, it's very, like, werewolfy, but I don't think it's quite the same thing.
No.
I think it will actually work. I know the Howling is very much like a cult of werewolves, but, like, it's that, but not werewolves.
Yeah.
It's, sorceresses who have kind of, like, either taken over a town or they just happen to just own this little area, this little part of the world.
Yep.
And they're trying to bring in a demon spawn from another dimension into this world.
I mean, and stuff like that's even deeper, that not that you could get from the house going through, but I would think it would be fun too if, like, the sorceress was, like, kind of the last of the kind
of
that
her
is trying to be portaled in.
Yeah.
And this is her last go at trying to survive and keep her world that's not in our world alive. And she finally found the way to pull one in on that Halloween night.
Yep.
And then she has enough time now for that next Halloween, the second Halloween.
Yeah, I gotcha.
To be like, okay, this was the night it happened. This is what we had to perform, but we have to find a way to perform it again in more areas to slowly
It makes sense.
keep growing.
And ready for this?
Yeah.
So over time, she transforms into Terra Crentis, and she creates the Terra Crentis realm. See, I told you. I'm tying icons into every single one of these.
Find a way.
I will find a way to do it. This is off the dome, people. Off the dome.
So now continuing across, we are at Scarecrow, which of course was a house.
This is going to be hard.
So this one's tough.
Because we don't want to, like you said, I think earlier, we don't want to, like, just say, well, let's make it Scarecrow too. Like, obviously, that's the easy answer. Mm-hmm. I think what we would really need to do is let's come up with a brand new story, but utilize the Scarecrow character. So how do you do that? That's a real hard question to answer.
So what I had in mind is just like
Jeeper Creeper 4.
Yeah, right. Scarecrows, obviously very, like, rural area, very farm style. Where should they kind of not be, where it would be fun to play with? And I came to the idea of scarecrows in a city.
Big city greens.
So how,
for any of my parents out there.
Yeah. How could we kind of do this? So my idea was the original Scarecrow house, The Reaping, was during that Depression era, Dust Bowl or Dust Storm, stuff like that. So what we have is this decrepit, falling apart museum that still holds all different pieces of history. And in there is an area based off of the Great Depression and the Midwest and stuff like that. The building finally collapses, and then when the items from the Scarecrow house, whether it be the windmill or a tractor or whatever, when they collapse into the ground and finally touch the soil, the ground, the scarecrows again begin to kind of be born from this touch of surface. So they start to kind of, again, grow from that area. So it would be fun to kind of have a whole
Night at
scene.
the museum.
Very Night at Museum. I love Night at Museum, but that's kind of where I was like, I started thinking about it. I'm like, shit, it's too much like that, but I don't care because
I think it would work. I mean, there hasn't
fun.
been a whole lot of original houses that follow that theme.
Yeah,
like the Night at the. I mean, think about it. Not even talking Scarecrow, like just a Night at the Museum style original house. That would be an awesome house.
Yeah.
Like not even like a Night at the Museum, like a traditional like, oh, this is the museum's like the Smithsonian. No, we're talking like a torture museum, something crazy like that comes to life or something stupid. I don't know.
But yeah, so that was where I kind of
work.
it. The entrance could be that collapsed, like you're walking in through the collapse, almost like if you're obviously from Orlando, you've seen Ripley's Believe It or Not, upside down, not upside down, but a decrepit kind of museum facade where you see it's a museum, you know what it is, and you're walking in, and you walk in through these displays that are kind of pushed over, shattered, and then right in front of you, that's finally standing on the ground and not just a floor, is the big windmill. And you can see that there's stuff like whether it's corn or leaves or stuff. Everything else is kind of like black, gray, dusty, but there's green sprouts, like fresh green sprouts at the base of the windmill. And it needed to actually touch the soil for the curse to kind of come back to life. But I thought it would just be very eerie to have. Oh God, corn pun. Eerie to have like
that was totally intentional too, by the way.
These city style like rooms to make it feel like you're in a big open city, and then like at the end of the hallway with like those mirror tricks, you see like just the corn guy, or the pig mask guy.
Yeah,
I would bring all the characters from this scare zone and from the house back, and kind of reuse it versus unlike Sweets where I want to kind of create new ones, this one I want to kind of take these characters again and present them in such a different landscape that it feels so off and off-putting.
Yeah, well, it's like things that aren't supposed to be where they are.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird that they're there. Like, why are we here and these things are the bad... Like, why are these attacking
Why
us?
is there a scarecrow in the middle of the highway?
I mean, like I said,
or whatever.
We're trying to be original with it and not do the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. So I think that would fit. And again, I'll go back to it. I like the idea of like things in a museum coming to life.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they there? We'll never know.
Well, yeah. It's just covering the giant storm of whatever 1932 or whatever.
Yeah, it could be like the great the great tornado.
It's the Dust Bowl that wiped the town
1874 or whatever.
Because in that history, this dust storm erased this town,
and for whatever reason, all the souls lost when the storm came through became like the souls of the scarecrows.
And that's kind of what it was. It was like almost the vanishing town. The dust storm.
The night the town vanished. Yeah.
Everyone else, the world thinks it was the dust storm, but really what happened was the dust storm awakened the scarecrows killed the people turned into scarecrows, and then everyone was gone.
Children of the storm.
Yeah. Yep. So having it like that, I think it would just be fun seeing like those museum hallways leading outside into the you have a straight up city. I keep thinking of that scene from Case Files where you're kind of walking outside the Kitty Cat Club, where it feels very city-ish. You got like the lamps and the brick building. You can do something like that where you're creating a sidewalk. You could have like a taxi scare.
Yeah,
like
I mean you have
taxi.
Like your victims are goers, or theater goers, and theater ushers, or theater whatever you call them, people that run the theater. Museum goers, and then the museum curator, whatever the hell they're called, like that one of their victims is a curator and he's done up a certain way, or she's done up a certain way.
Just like super, like I think of too from like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the kid that's like becomes Harold when he's just like throwing up the straw, and just kind of it's slowly like piercing through
like
his
victims
skin.
Like attached to the windmill, like spinning around and around, or body parts attached to the windmill.
Yeah, but I thought this one would be like a fun, very like, where can we set this that would be different? Because we've done the whole Scarecrow-y vibe twice, and when you do Scarecrow, you know where it's gonna be. So let's just kind of switch it up.
Put it in a museum of antiquities.
Yeah, might as well, right?
Why not, right?
All right. So lastly, we get to Graveyard Deadly Unrest.
I don't get to tie an icon into that house.
I mean, if you got one.
All right. So Cindy Kine
Yeah.
is on a field trip with her dad
To the museum.
the caretaker
of
to the museum, and they're trying to be like normal human beings, and they can't get away from the horror that is their life. So of course, while they're there, God, Zooks, we can't just be normal, Cindy. Zoinks. So they,
because we're watching
Scooby-Doo. So like they can't get away from it, and now the scarecrows are coming to life.
Yeah. So that's what I had for that one.
I try my hardest, guys.
So Graveyard Deadly Unrest. Now this is the one where I ran out of time, so I did not come up with like this original story. But
this one,
I don't think we need it for this one.
Yeah, the problem I have with this one is kind of along the same lines as the Horrors of Halloween, where there's not. I mean,
it's very
not a lot there.
Yeah.
On the surface. But also with Scarecrow, I don't want to just rehash graveyard games.
Yeah.
And I feel like anything you do now that's graveyard-esque is going to be compared to graveyard games because it's one of the better recent houses. Mm-hmm. Some people probably still think it's one of the best houses ever.
Yep.
I still think it's probably a top 5 house.
It's
overall ever.
Up there.
And I haven't only done a few of them, but that's what I worry about this one is there's not a whole lot going on. So what I think you'd have to do is focus on a specific character.
Yep.
Or characters.
Yep.
As I think you and I are probably thinking the same thing. You have to really kind of focus in on one of them and build a story around them.
Yep.
And then you can tie in other characters and other characters from that scare zone around those two I keep saying two characters.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about. So my thought would be like tie some story in around the twins because we all love the twins. Go back to listen to our awards episode if you haven't listened to it yet.
Yep. They may have won an award.
I think if you build a story around them and then tie the graveyard in around them, it becomes more to it. Or, attach the graveyard to a mansion and they were the twins of some heiress or some heir to a fortune.
I like that.
And, they were murdered by their... again, sounds very much like The Shining, but, you pull these ideas from existing property anyways.
Yep.
But I don't think it has to be specifically like that. I still think that you could find a way to build a story around those two characters and tie in the graveyard to it.
So I like the aspect of maybe all of the characters we saw, the graveyard, are in a graveyard on like a mansion's property.
Right. They're all part of the same family.
So it's all family, butlers, and something went horribly wrong at, whatever. Maybe it was a party.
A mass murder.
I would do it like one of those unintentional like
the mansion burned down.
An unintentional group suicide where like somebody poisoned
like
everything
a cult
down.
suicide.
Yes.
I hate that.
Yes.
I hate cult suicides, but
I don't hate the idea.
The idea for house, I think it works.
Not too shabby.
It's 21st century. I have to clarify that I'm not cool with cult suicides.
Not my favorite thing.
Not my idea of a good time.
I don't like it on Facebook. I would make this, and I think going forward we're gonna continue to reference Dead Man's Pier, that house as
how do you not?
As I know, but like it's gonna be its own term. Like a dead man's house is now going to be a beautiful house,
right?
It doesn't necessarily mean it's scary, but like it's just a beautiful house to look at, and that's what I think this
look
one
at
should
like
be.
the Haunted Mansion as an example.
Yep.
Like obviously that's a very, very family oriented ride, but you take that same idea where like there's a mansion. Kind of like you think of it like Hide and Seek, that movie Hide and Seek.
Yeah,
it's a good movie. An idea of a mansion and a crazy eclectic family, and for some reason something bad goes wrong. Like somebody goes crazy, murders the whole family, or the house burns down, or there's ghosts in that exist that corrupt. I don't know. There's a million things you can do with it.
Yeah.
But it does still come off as different than just a traditional walk through the graveyard type haunt.
So I would almost do it. This would be fun. If it was in like you walking through the house is in reverse time. So as you walk through, it is the graveyard with the ghosts. And as you walk through the doors, you're slowly seeing the story of how these characters were murdered and the ending of
like a reverse type chronology.
Yeah, so at the end of the house, you are left with the live characters, and you've at that point finally answered the questions of, how did all of these people come to be at this one graveyard? Who are all these people? And you slowly see like, oh, this character was the butler.
Yeah,
these characters were the two twins, the daughters. These were this was the father.
You could do it either over a long period of time or even like the course of a night.
Yeah,
like start where everybody's kind of like become like ghosts and zombies and stuff like that, and work your way back, and you come to find out it started at a funeral.
Yeah,
and they're like, mourning the loss of their matriarch or whatever, and she died after living to 120 or whatever. Yeah. But it turns out she's like a fucking crazy person,
Queen Elizabeth,
and she like infected all the other people with craziness pills.
Yeah,
and they murdered each other.
Because I get a lot of like Haunting a Hill House vibes. Yeah, where that story just kind of like.
But I like the idea
slowly get a little bit more.
But I like telling it in reverse.
Yeah,
like whereas like.
Because I want to start with what we knew. We start with the graveyard, the ghosts, and we see it.
It's like a Tarantino house.
And we're like, okay, I remember these characters. I get it. And then as you walk through the house, you're seeing each one of these individuals. Like you're seeing their kill scene, essentially. You're seeing how and where and why and stuff like that. And then you're left at the very end. And who did it? I
don't hate that.
Maybe the twins.
But you don't know. You never find out.
So And I would have this very like gothic-y style.
So yeah, and I think that's a good idea. I do think that like I would love, and I said it up front, I think to kind of expound upon the idea of focusing solely on someone like the twins.
Solely. I see what you did there.
Yeah, see? I totally intended that. Take the twins, obviously very popular characters from the Scare Zone.
Yeah.
And build a story around them specifically. And like I said, they could be twins and they were born to a rich, family, a rich dad, like a fucking like a turn of the century oil tycoon who made his fortune off the backs of other off the backs of like basically slave labor, killing, not killing his workforce off specifically, but like working him to the bone with a point where like, or maybe he owns like a big mining company and a bunch of his workers died in a mine accident or just were dying regularly, and they come back to like haunt him and like to get revenge they like possess the twins.
I would say that the catalyst of the story would be somehow the twins had died of
a mysterious sickness or something.
Something happened to the twins' death which caused the father or mother to go crazy and commit all the other and kind of unleash their depression or fury onto the other residents of the house or the family.
Again, this is stealing from many different things in pop culture, but they die of a mysterious cause and they come back to haunt their father, who was turned into a recluse, and he's shuttered himself up in his little like mansion thing or whatever, and now he's seeing visions of his dead daughters like coming back to life to haunt him, but at the same time like people from his past are also coming back to haunt him, which would take up some of the other scare actors that you see in the Scare Zone. I don't know how you make it work as a house, but I think the story's a cool idea.
The story's there. So I mean, it's again just taking those characters and trying to find a way to piece them all together, because in the Scare Zone there is no relation between
there isn't.
All of these.
And I think it's what's so great about it is that like it is very cliche. It's a graveyard with a bunch of dead people in it.
Yeah.
But there's so many stories you can create and backstories you can come up with for all of these different characters. Even like the plain Jane, Night of the Living Dead zombies who come out of like the tombs and be like, you can still come up with a reason for
I'll say butler, uncle.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone has
crazy Uncle Ted.
The big like demon gargoyle guys or whatever are literally just, they're not even really characters. But they're gargoyles, like statues on the property.
And I love that idea too. Yeah, like
and
we're like
they've
almost,
kind of become, like,
which is why I kind of like the whole figment of somebody's like depression or his
seeping into reality.
Yeah, exactly. Like his anxieties or her anxieties are seeping into reality in the sense that like they're creating the monsters that they see.
Yeah, I like that. Well, we made it.
We actually came up with ideas.
We pulled those ones out of our ass.
Literally every week. How many episodes are we in? Like 100 and something now at this point?
10 something.
Literally every single episode we go, how the how are we gonna make this an episode? And then we talk for an hour and a half about it.
Who knows? But yeah, and obviously, I bet we could revisit this idea on different years. I think that would be fun to kind of look at past years.
We could go back at
zones.
past scare zones, or just give me a top 10 list of scare zones, and then come up with ideas for it. Yeah.
So that might be something that we do down the line. If you enjoyed it, let us know. If you think those ideas are fucking trash, then
please let us know.
I don't care.
I like reading the negative stuff because it's funny.
Yeah. But no, it was a fun idea. I like the aspect of finding a new story from within the scare zone. Damn it, Opie, we made it almost the whole episode.
He's fine. He's just trying to put his 2 cents in.
He's getting antsy. He doesn't like the twins. He's scared of the twins.
Are you scared of twins?
He's
I'm scared of the twins too.
Twins,
Basil. Twins.
So yeah, that is something that we'll probably revisit down the line as well. But yeah, let us know in the comments what you think about these not possible house ideas. I say that as if it's ever going to happen. But
yeah,
but
if I swear to God, if a twins based house comes out in the next couple of years, I'm taking credit for it.
That's one where I think it's so similar to other stuff they have had they wouldn't. Whereas Major Suites is so different.
But I think that that's so obvious.
Yeah.
That they would do that. We can't take credit for it.
Yeah, right.
But if they take ones that you think that are too samey, but they're we listen to those Fear Beer guys.
Oh yeah.
They had a really good idea. Taking credit for it.
Wait a second.
Just so you know, when you guys come to Spooky again, you do your little panel. I'm gonna say you stole the idea from us,
and I'll still be yelling about Season of the Witch.
Well, because Season of the Witch is gonna happen.
All right, well, guys, we will be back next week. Again, we will come up with an idea at some point. We will let you know. But until then, this is Nick,
and this is the Twins' crazy dad.
Happy Hans.
It's cursed. It's got a death curse.
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.